What's happening, Nerd Squad, and welcome back to Top 10 Nerd. Since the early 80s, Venom has been terrorizing the pages of Marvel Comics. It was created by the Dark Elder god Knull, and the symbiote first found its way to Peter Parker, Spider-Man, and then its more suitable host, Eddie Brock. Now, Venom has had some ups and downs in the comics, but today we're taking a closer look at the latter. So grab some tissues, because it's about to get a little emotional on this channel. I'm Taylor McWatters, and here are the top 10 saddest things that have ever happened to Venom. Let's do it. Number 10, he created Carnage. With Venom, Let There Be Carnage releasing later on this year, we finally get to see Carnage on the big screen with Woody Harrelson set to play the mad Cletus Cassidy. So why not kick this list off with one of Venom's biggest mistakes? Creating Carnage. When Eddie Brock was doing time at Rikers Island, his cellmate was none other than Cletus Cassidy, who was in there for horrible crimes. So when Venom came to break Eddie out of jail and reunite, part of the symbiote was left behind, and it ended up bonding with Cletus Cassidy. That plus the symbiote equals, well, Carnage. Absolutely. And we meet Carnage for the first time in comics with Amazing Spider-Man issue 361. In a list of sad moments in Venom's life, I think creating your archenemy is worth a mention. After all, his name may pop up again on this list, but that's for later. And before we continue on with some sad Venom moments, guys, if you could go ahead and give this video a thumbs up just to boost some morale. It's a sad video. We could use some thumbs up, brighten the mood a little bit. And if you haven't already subscribed, now would be a good time to do so as well. Just a little click, click, and then we're happy. That's it. It does wonders for the channel. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for your support. Now back to some sad Venom times. Number 9, too many webs, too little time. It takes time getting used to your superpowers. I mean, to figure out the do's and the don'ts. Look at Scarlet Witch or the Hulk even, for example. Even having years of experience, things can still go south. In the comics, it doesn't take long for Venom to figure out webs are not unlimited. In the fabulous 300th issue of The Amazing Spider-Man, we see Venom's first swing at the spider life. He bonded with Spider-Man first, so when MJ meets the symbiote for the first time, she actually thinks that it's still Peter in his new black suit. He's similar to Spider-Man, only his webbing comes from his own symbiotic material. So when he shoots out the webs, he's really just shooting out himself. And eventually, he starts to run out of himself. He ends up falling to the ground, ending his first conflict with Spider-Man in a rather depressing way. Now, this isn't a video game, Eddie, so webbing is limited this time around. Number 8, clapped by the Hulk. When it comes to taking down the crazy Clintar, you can usually rely on fire to help settle the score, or its other main weakness, sound. Now, at the end of the movie Spider-Man 3, we saw Peter Parker figure this out. It matched the comics a lot with the bell tower, the symbiote being torn off Eddie Brock, all that jazz. But in Peter David's The Incredible Hulk vs. Venom, we see Hulk dish out a thunderous clap, so loud that Venom gets knocked right out. He gets clapped so hard that he throws up, which is pretty wild to me, considering just 4 pages before, he took an undercut of a lifetime from the Hulk, yet that sound weakness is just too much to bear. Somebody tell Venom to never see a Slipknot concert ever. The guy wouldn't even make it past the openers. Number 7, snarky Tony Stark. In Iron Man issue 302, readers got to see a venomous blowout. Well, sort of. See, this is the time in the comics where Venom started to switch over to the good side. He started to become a part-time hero. This is after his truce with Spider-Man was made in Amazing Spider-Man 375. So he's going toe-to-toe with Stark now because, well, he doesn't like his company, he doesn't agree with how he runs things, the whole shebang. They're fighting, Stark switches over to ultrasound imaging because, you know, there was goop all over his mask and you couldn't see. But the ultrasound imaging was, of course, harmful to Venom. They just weren't a fan. So as you're reading this, you would think, okay, this is how he stops him. Some cool tech, checks out. Wrong. See, Stark actually roasts Venom so hard that he stops fighting. He insults him. He makes him feel so bad with his words. He straight up shames him. He's like, oh, you want to confront evil? Well, how about you take a good look in the mirror, pal? 6, unfortunate Fortunato. Losing a battle is all part of the fun as well. So Venom got shamed so hard that he backed into a cave. When you're defeated, you gotta come up with a new plan. It's part of the gig. But sometimes when Venom loses these battles with Spider-Man, he doesn't take it very well. Like Angelo Fortunato. Back in 2005, Marvel wanted to reboot Venom, so the new Venom host was Don Fortunato. And in his story, he won the symbiote in an auction. He gave the suit to his son Angelo in attempts to toughen him up. I mean, sure, paintball would have sufficed, but sure, super suit it is. Eddie warned Angelo about the risks of doing this, but Angelo didn't listen. He ignored Eddie and then attacked Spider-Man anyways. He fought him, he ripped out Spider-Man's heart, and then he realized it's not actually Spider-Man. Rather, it was an imposter all along. So you would think that would be the end of it. That's pretty harsh enough. That could probably be a list point by itself. But when the real Spider-Man came in, Angelo didn't stand a chance. He was getting whooped. He was getting whooped so hard that he left. He just ran away from the problem. And maybe Eddie was right. Okay, fair. But Venom wasn't a fan of this idea. The whole running away from a fight thing didn't sit well with him. So he abandoned his host mid-air. No, he didn't order him an Uber. He didn't drop him off at a Burger King. He was like, yeet now, bye, see ya. Spider-Man would have saved him, but his gear wasn't working properly after the fight that Angelo had just caused. You played yourself. Number 5, the Savage Six. The Crime Master has been a Spider-Man villain since The Amazing Spider-Man issue 11, and in 2012 he gathered his own team of villains called the Savage Six. It consisted of Death Adder, the Human Fly, Jack-o'-lantern, Megattack, and Toxin. Now, Crime Master forcefully bonded Eddie with the Toxin symbiote, and then the team targeted all those that Venom cared about. And then in the very next issue, they go after Betty Brant, with Jack-o'-lantern first up to bat. Next, the team sets their sights on Betty's family. The Human Fly was actually seconds away from eating Betty's mother. It's horrible. And then in part 4, it's revealed that the Crime Master was actually Betty Brant's brother, and Betty was forced to deal with him the hard way. Poor Eddie, and also poor Betty. Poor Eddie and Betty. This is a lose-lose for both parties involved. Number 4, bonding with Anne Wang. Anne first met Eddie Brock at Empire State University. She made her comic debut back in Amazing Spider-Man 375. She's a wonderful lady. She reflects on how once upon a time, her and Eddie were in love because, well, he was smart, witty, and he had a boyish charm that swept her off her feet. Sounds magical. But we're in a list of sad Venom moments, so it's about to change. Sorry. While they were married, Eddie became a journalist for the Daily Globe. Now, this happened while she was a lawyer. After she divorced him, which is fine because sometimes things don't work out, things only got worse for her. She was shot by the villain Sin Eater, so Eddie figured it was a good idea to loan her some of the symbiote stuff, to help heal her. Now, it worked, but the only downside is now we have another Venom. It's not that easy. You can't just put some goop on someone, heal them up, and then bring it back without consequences. So now we have another Venom. Now we have She-Venom. Anne ended up taking the lives of 2 men who attacked her, so although the symbiote returned to Eddie, she still has to live with all of those memories during that time. And she was traumatized until the end of her life. She couldn't even leave her own apartment. That's how bad it was. Even for such a short amount of time, Venom can cause quite the stress. Number 3, tortured by Carnage. So remember that Carnage guy that I mentioned at the beginning of this list? Well, in Web of Spider-Man issue 103, which is part of the Maximum Carnage storyline, Cletus Cassidy straight up tortures Venom. He chains him up over top of a fire, which we know doesn't mix too well with symbiotes, and he also shot at him with a sonic gun. So that's 2 weaknesses right there, boom. It's not looking good. Now, it's one thing to be attacked by your greatest enemy, but when they know your weak points because you are the reason they exist, that's a whole new level of pain. It's painful and personal. Carnage is just the worst. Number 2, he was fired. Perhaps one of the most saddest moments is when Eddie and the symbiote first met. And it happened to be on one of the worst days of Eddie's life. He had just been fired by J. Jonah Jameson for making Spider-Man out to look like a thief. So with his journalism career now over, he goes to Our Lady of Saints Church, asks for forgiveness, and while he was there at his arguably lowest moment in life, that's when Venom just had to come along. To think that all this started because of a mistake that Eddie made with his job is just arguably the most sad point of all of them. The hatred for Peter plus the symbiote's hatred for Spider-Man, I mean, this was the world's best timing. A match made in heaven. Or a church, rather. Close enough. And number 1, his childhood. What's a villain without a sad origin story? Before the symbiote even came in contact with Eddie, his sad days were already well upon him. He grew up without a mother. She sadly didn't survive when she had Eddie, and his father, Carl Brock, resented Eddie for this, which is awful. What a terrible way to grow up. Nobody should have to experience that, let alone feel guilt for that afterwards as well. That's horrible. But Eddie was doing great in school. He was actually really trying to earn his father's love growing up. And in order to make friends, Eddie would often find things that were lost. So he would steal things and then return them just to make a friend. That's how bad this guy's life was. Poor Eddie. And then when he was a teenager, his bad luck grew immensely. He took his father's car and snuck out for a night in the town. And when he was on his way home, he accidentally hit his neighbor's son. Now his father ordered him to plead innocence, although Eddie's guilt was at an all-time high. He ended up pleading not guilty, but in doing so, it bankrupted his father and it ruined his reputation at the same time. That on top of Eddie's already horrible childhood, I can't imagine. This is a terrible origin story. No wonder the symbiote consumed him. Poor kid. Well guys, there you have it. Are you looking forward to Venom Let There Be Carnage? Are we pumped to see Woody Harrelson as a redhead? These are the big questions we need answers to. Let us know your thoughts and concerns in the comments down below. I've been your host, Taylor McWatters, and join us next time on Top 10 Nerd. Peace.